Let me say something that might make you uncomfortable. Everything you've been told about why you feel weaker, slower, and less like yourself after 50, most of it is wrong. Not slightly off, not a little outdated, fundamentally, completely wrong. And I say that not to be provocative. I say that because I've spent years working with men in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who were told by perfectly well-meaning doctors, trainers, and health influencers that what they were experiencing was just aging, just the natural decline, just something you accept, manage, and eventually surrender to. And those men, they believed it. They adjusted. They lowered their expectations. They stopped going to the gym as hard. They stopped being as present with their partners. They started sitting more, doing less, expecting less from their own bodies. And here's what breaks my heart about that. It didn't have to happen that way. Because what I'm going to show you today is that the fatigue, the weak flow, the sluggish performance, the lack of drive and stamina, that's not your body aging out of commission. That's your body sending you a very specific signal that a very specific system has been neglected. And when you address that system directly, naturally, with the right inputs, your body responds. Powerfully, often within days. I'm going to give you the full picture today. No drugs, no extreme protocols, no embarrassing prescriptions or procedures. What I'm going to show you is a natural, practical, and surprisingly simple approach that starts with something you may already have in your kitchen cabinet castor oil and builds from there into a complete layered system that targets the exact biological roots of what you're experiencing. Now, you might be thinking castor oil? Really? That old folk remedy? What does that have to do with flow, performance, and feeling like a man again? Stay with me, because where you apply it, when you apply it, and what you combine it with changes everything. And by the time we're done here today, you're going to understand exactly why this works, not because someone told you it does, but because you're going to understand the biology well enough to see it yourself. But first, I need to tell you something about what's actually happening inside your body right now, because until you understand the mechanism, the solution won't fully make sense. And once you understand it, you won't be able to unsee it. All right. Let's talk about what's actually going on. There is one system in your body, one primary biological network that governs almost everything we're going to talk about today. Your circulation, your hormonal output, your pelvic health, your stamina, your clarity, your drive. All of it feeds from the same root. That system is your lymphatic and vascular microcirculation, specifically in the pelvic and lower abdominal region. Now, I know that sounds clinical, so let me give you a picture that actually makes sense. Imagine your body is a city, a massive, complex, living city, and running through that city is a network of roads, highways, side streets, back alleys. These roads carry everything the city needs: fuel, nutrients, signals, repair crews, waste removal trucks. Every neighborhood depends on those roads functioning properly. Now, the pelvic region, the area that governs your prostate, your reproductive system, your urinary function, your sexual performance, that neighborhood sits at the far end of the city. And here's the problem. As men age, those roads to that neighborhood start to deteriorate. They narrow, they get congested, traffic slows, delivery trucks take longer to arrive, the waste removal crews stop showing up as often. The neighborhood doesn't collapse overnight, it just slowly starts to underperform. Things don't get delivered on time, the repair crews are always a little late, the lights flicker more often, and the men living in that neighborhood, you start to notice things aren't quite right. But because the decline is gradual, most men assume it's just normal. That's just getting older, right? Wrong. What's actually happening is that circulation to that critical region is being chronically compromised. And when circulation drops, when that vascular and lymphatic delivery network weakens, everything downstream suffers. Blood flow to the prostate decreases. The prostate, which depends on robust circulation to stay healthy and properly sized, starts to swell and congest. That's what creates the weak, interrupted urinary stream. That's what creates the urgency, the frequency at night, the feeling that you never fully empty. Testosterone production, which depends on healthy blood flow and nerve signaling to the testes and the entire hormonal axis, starts to decline faster than it should. Not just because of age, but because the roads delivering the hormonal signals are damaged. The muscles and connective tissue in the pelvic floor, which are responsible for the strength, control, and sustained performance that men often think of as purely a confidence issue, those muscles start to weaken and stiffen, not because they've given up, but because they're not getting the circulation, the oxygen, and the neurological stimulation they need to stay strong. And the nerve endings, those incredibly sensitive pathways that govern sensation, reflex, and the feedback loops that make physical performance feel like performance, those nerves become sluggish when they're surrounded by congested, oxygen-poor tissue. The result? You feel it everywhere. You feel it in the bathroom at 3 a.m. You feel it in the bedroom when confidence fades. You feel it at the gym when you hit a wall you can't push through. You feel it at work when the mental sharpness you used to have isn't quite there. And almost nobody, not your doctor, not the health influencers, not the supplement ads, almost nobody is talking about this root cause. They're all focused on symptoms, on testosterone numbers, on prostate scores, on performance metrics. But the root, the circulation, the pelvic microvascular network, that gets almost no attention, until now. Now, here's where most men go wrong, and I want you to really hear this part, because it explains why you might have already tried things that didn't work, or things that worked briefly and then stopped, or things that helped a little but never addressed the full picture. When men start noticing these issues, the flow problems, the performance dip, the fatigue, the standard advice usually goes one of three directions. The first direction: take a testosterone supplement, boosters, pills, sometimes prescription hormone therapy. And look, testosterone has its place. I'm not dismissing it, but here's the thing: if your vascular roads are deteriorated, if your circulation is compromised, if the tissue in your pelvic region is congested and oxygen-starved, pouring more testosterone into that system is like trying to speed up delivery trucks on roads full of potholes. The trucks exist, the cargo exists, but the infrastructure is broken, so the delivery still doesn't happen properly. The second direction: exercise more, work your core, do Kegels, strengthen the pelvic floor. And again, not wrong exactly. Exercise is powerful. But here's the frustrating truth. If you're doing Kegels and core work on chronically congested pelvic tissue, you're trying to build a house on a swampy foundation. You work, and the results never quite match the effort. Men tell me this all the time. I do everything right, I work out, I eat clean, I take my supplements, and I still feel like something is off. That's the missing piece right there. You're addressing the muscles. You're not addressing the circulation and lymphatic stagnation underneath those muscles. The third direction: just manage it. Alpha blockers for the prostate, sleep aids for the 3 a.m. bathroom trips, performance medications for the bedroom, and these things manage symptoms. They do, but they don't fix the underlying circulation problem. They're like painting over water-damaged walls without fixing the leak. It looks better for a while, and then the damage comes back, usually worse than before. This is why you've tried everything and still feel like something's missing. Not because you're doing it wrong, not because your body is broken beyond repair, but because nobody gave you the actual tool that addresses the root. Think of it this way: you have a garden hose, beautiful hose, good water pressure, but there's a kink in the hose right at the middle. No matter how much water pressure you put in at the source testosterone, exercise, supplements, all of it, the flow at the end of the hose is still weak. The kink is the problem. And until someone shows you where the kink is and how to release it, all the other effort produces disappointing results. Today, we're going to release the kink. And the first tool we're going to use to do that, that's the one that's going to surprise you: castor oil. Castor oil is derived from the seeds of the Ricinus communis plant. And what makes it extraordinary, what separates it from virtually every other oil or topical substance, is its primary active compound, ricinoleic acid. Ricinoleic acid makes up roughly 90% of castor oil's fatty acid profile. And here's what makes it unique. It has an incredibly strong affinity for the EP3 receptor, a prostaglandin receptor found in smooth muscle tissue, lymphatic vessels, and nerve endings throughout the body. When ricinoleic acid binds to these receptors, it triggers a cascade of biological effects that are almost tailor-made for exactly what we've been talking about. It stimulates lymphatic flow, the lymphatic system, that waste removal, immune signaling, fluid regulating network that runs parallel to your circulatory system, responds directly to ricinoleic acid. Think of your lymphatic system as the city's sewage and delivery network combined. When castor oil is applied topically over key areas of the body, it penetrates through the skin into the underlying fascia and lymphatic vessels, and it literally gets traffic moving again. Congestion clears, waste products move out. Fresh oxygenated fluid and immune factors move in. It reduces local inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation in the pelvic tissue around the prostate, in the pelvic floor muscles, surrounding the bladder, is one of the primary drivers of all the symptoms we've been discussing. Studies show that ricinoleic acid has significant anti-inflammatory effects in soft tissue, comparable in some contexts to over-the-counter anti-inflammatories, but without the systemic side effects. When that inflammation begins to resolve, the tissue becomes more supple, more receptive to blood flow, more responsive to nerve signaling. Now here's the specific application that matters. You want to warm the castor oil slightly, not hot, just warm. Use about a tablespoon in your palm and apply it to the lower abdomen starting just below your navel. Work it gently downward and outward across the lower pelvis. You can extend the application to the inner thighs, which sit directly over major lymphatic drainage channels that serve the pelvic region. Some practitioners also recommend a small amount applied with gentle pressure at the perineum, the area between the scrotum and the anus, which sits directly over the prostate and pelvic floor musculature. That specific application has a more direct effect on lymphatic drainage around the prostate itself. Leave it on for at least 30 to 45 minutes. Ideally, you do this at night, before sleep. Your body does its deepest repair and circulation work during sleep, and having the ricinoleic acid actively penetrating the tissue during those hours amplifies the effect considerably. The first time you do this, you might notice a warmth in the area, a subtle tingling or increased sensation. That's the hyperemic response, circulation increasing, tissue waking up. Men often report feeling a sense of release or relaxation in the pelvic area that they didn't even realize was tense, like something letting go that had been clenched for years. Within a few days of consistent application, many men start noticing changes in urinary flow. The stream becomes stronger, more consistent, less interrupted. Night trips to the bathroom start to decrease. That urgency, that desperate, "I need to go right now" feeling begins to soften. Within a week to 2 weeks, with consistent use, the downstream effects begin to reach further. Pelvic muscle tone improves as circulation and nerve signaling normalize. Sensation and responsiveness begin to return in areas that had gone quiet. Energy levels, which are profoundly influenced by pelvic health and hormonal signaling, start to shift. And this is where I need to pause and tell you something important. Castor oil alone is powerful, but it's not the whole system. Because we're not just trying to open the roads, we need to make sure that the right fuel, the right repair crews, and the right structural workers are ready to do their jobs once the roads are open. That's where our second ingredient comes in. And this one is going to change how you think about something you've probably heard 100 times before. Black seed oil, Nigella sativa. Also called black cumin, black caraway, or in ancient Arabic tradition, Habatus sauda, the seed of blessing. There's a reason this plant has been used medicinally across multiple cultures for over 3,000 years. And there's a reason modern research keeps coming back to it with results that consistently exceed expectations. Black seed oil naturally and gently modulates this process. It doesn't eliminate DHT, you don't want to do that. DHT has legitimate functions. But it brings the conversion rate back toward a healthy balance, which means the prostate gets less of the hormonal signal telling it to grow, and the flow improves from the hormonal side to complement the circulatory improvement that castor oil is providing. Simultaneously, thymoquinone is one of the most potent natural anti-inflammatory compounds identified in modern research. It inhibits multiple inflammatory pathways, particularly NF-κB, which is one of the master switches of chronic inflammation in the body. When you apply castor oil and open up circulation in the pelvic region, you're flooding tissue that may have been chronically inflamed with fresh blood and immune factors. Black seed oil, taken internally, ensures that the systemic inflammatory environment supports recovery rather than continuing the cycle of damage. It also has direct antioxidant effects on the mitochondria within pelvic floor cells and testicular cells. Oxidative stress, the cellular rust that accumulates with age, is one of the primary drivers of declining testosterone production and declining performance capacity. Thymoquinone penetrates into mitochondria and scavenges the free radicals that cause this cellular rust. The cells that produce testosterone, the cells in your pelvic floor muscles, the nerve cells that govern sensation and reflex, they start functioning more efficiently because their mitochondria are cleaner and more protected. And here's the synergy with castor oil that I want you to really understand. Castor oil opens circulation and creates a hyperemic, lymph-rich, anti-inflammatory local environment in the pelvic tissue. Black seed oil, working systemically from the inside, ensures that the blood flowing into that improved circulatory environment is carrying the right signals-balanced hormonal inputs, reduced inflammatory cytokines, antioxidant protection. The two work together like the construction crew and the material supplier. One prepares the site, the other delivers what's needed to build something stronger. Take black seed oil internally, about a teaspoon to a tablespoon daily. You can take it straight, which has a pungent, slightly bitter, warm, and spicy taste that most men find either neutral or actually pleasantly medicinal. Or you can add it to a smoothie, take it with honey, or blend it into warm water with ginger. Consistency matters more than method here. The effects of thymoquinone are cumulative, they build in the tissue over time. Some men report noticing effects within a few days. A quiet reduction in pelvic tension. Slightly stronger flow, a subtle but noticeable shift in energy and drive. For others, the effects are more gradual, building steadily over 2 to 4 weeks, until one day they realize things are meaningfully different than they were a month ago. But we're not done building the system, because these two ingredients are the foundation, the opener, and the protector. Now we add the boosters, the additional layers that ensure multiple pathways are working together toward the same result. This is where the protocol becomes a complete system. What we've built so far targets circulation and lymphatic flow through castor oil and hormonal balance and cellular protection through black seed oil. Now we're going to add layers that target nerve function, testosterone optimization, nitric oxide production, and pelvic floor health through entirely different biological pathways. Multiple systems, one outcome. Let's go through them. Booster number 1, ashwagandha. You may have heard of ashwagandha. It's become one of the most discussed adaptogens in the natural health world over the past decade, but most men use it for stress and sleep, which are legitimate benefits without fully understanding its specific relevance to everything we're talking about. Here's the key mechanism. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. In normal, healthy amounts, it's essential, but in chronically elevated amounts, which is the state most men over 50 find themselves in due to work stress, poor sleep, accumulated life pressure cortisol is directly antagonistic to testosterone. Cortisol and testosterone are like two ends of a seesaw. When cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down. Not immediately, not dramatically in the short term, but chronically, consistently, over months and years. This is called the cortisol-testosterone antagonism, and it means that all the testosterone your body is capable of producing and all the testosterone-supporting work that castor oil and black seed oil are doing in your pelvic tissue gets partially undermined by chronically elevated cortisol, signaling your body to stay in survival mode rather than reproductive optimization mode. Ashwagandha, specifically its active compounds called withanolides, works through the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, to reduce the chronic overactivation of cortisol signaling. Multiple studies show that consistent ashwagandha use reduces serum cortisol levels by 20 to 30% in men with chronically elevated stress hormones. And when cortisol comes down, testosterone has room to rise. Not because ashwagandha adds testosterone, it doesn't work that way, but because it removes the hormonal interference that was suppressing your natural production. Additionally, research confirms that ashwagandha supports LH-luteinizing hormone, which is the pituitary signal that tells the testes to produce testosterone. By supporting the signaling pathway while reducing the interference, ashwagandha helps your body make the most of whatever testosterone producing capacity remains. Take 300 to 600 milligrams of an ashwagandha root extract, look for KSM 66 or sensoril on the label, as these are the most clinically validated standardized forms. Take it in the evening with your black seed oil. The combination of cortisol reduction and thymoquinone's antioxidant and 5-alpha reductase modulation creates a hormonal environment that comprehensively supports what castor oil is doing locally. Booster number 2, Pygium africanum. Pygium is extracted from the bark of an African cherry tree, and it has one of the longest histories of use specifically for prostate and urinary health of any natural compound in the world. European herbal medicine has used it for decades, and the research behind it is extensive and consistent. Pygium works through several mechanisms simultaneously, all of which are directly relevant to the weak flow, nocturnal urgency, and incomplete emptying that many men over 50 experience. It inhibits the proliferative signaling that drives prostate tissue overgrowth. Specifically, it reduces the sensitivity of prostate cells to the growth factors including DHT and insulin-like growth factor that signal them to multiply and expand. So while black seed oil reduces the production of the DHT signal, Pygium reduces how strongly the prostate tissue responds to that signal. This is a 1-2 punch on prostate overgrowth from two completely different angles. Pygium also has direct anti-inflammatory effects on the bladder and urethral tissue. The inflammation in and around the bladder neck, the area where the prostate wraps around the urethra, is a primary driver of that urgency and interrupted flow feeling. Pygium consistently reduces that inflammation, creating a more relaxed, cooperative environment for urinary function. And interestingly, Pygium has been shown to support healthy secretion function in the prostate, helping maintain the gland's healthy fluid production, which is part of how it stays sized and shaped correctly. Take 100 milligrams of Pygium extract daily. It combines seamlessly with black seed oil. They can be taken together and are mutually supportive. Booster number 3, L-citrulline. This one targets a completely different pathway, and it's one of the most powerful additions you can make to this system. Nitric oxide is arguably the most important molecule for male physical performance that most men have never heard of. It's a vasodilator, a molecule that signals the smooth muscle in blood vessel walls to relax and dilate, allowing more blood to flow through. And the entire mechanism of healthy sexual function, strong circulation to the pelvic region, and the vascular component of urinary health depends on robust nitric oxide production. Here's the problem. Nitric oxide production declines sharply with age. The enzyme responsible for producing it, ENOS, endothelial nitric oxide synthase, becomes less active as you get older, and the cells lining your blood vessels, particularly in the pelvic region, become less responsive to the nitric oxide signal. This contributes directly to the circulatory decline we talked about in Part 2. L-citrulline is an amino acid found naturally in watermelon and certain other plants. When you consume it, your body converts it to L-arginine, which is then used by ENOS to produce nitric oxide. But here's why citrulline works better than taking arginine directly. Arginine taken orally gets substantially degraded in the gut and liver before it can reach the bloodstream. Citrulline bypasses that degradation and delivers a more sustained, bioavailable supply of arginine to the endothelial cells where nitric oxide production happens. The result? Increased nitric oxide production in the very blood vessels that castor oil has already been stimulating to open through lymphatic and hyperemic effects. These two pathways, castor oil's mechanical circulation stimulation and citrulline's biochemical nitric oxide amplification, work together beautifully. The road is opened. The signal to keep it open and flowing strongly is amplified. Take 3 to 6 grams of L-citrulline daily. Unflavored citrulline powder mixes easily into water or a smoothie. Take it in the morning, as its vasodilatory effects are most beneficial during the active part of your day. Booster number 4, stinging nettle root. This is the one that surprises men the most. Because while most people have heard of stinging nettle as something you want to avoid on hiking trails, nettle root, the underground part of the plant, has a remarkably specific effect on male hormone availability that is directly relevant to performance, drive, and energy. Here's the mechanism. Testosterone in your bloodstream exists in two forms: bound and free. Bound testosterone is attached to a protein called sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG. When testosterone is bound to SHBG, it's essentially inactive, your cells can't use it. Only free testosterone, the portion not attached to SHBG, is biologically available to your muscles, your brain, your reproductive tissues, your energy systems. As men age, SHBG levels tend to increase, which means more and more of whatever testosterone your body produces gets locked up and made unavailable. So even if your total testosterone levels look reasonable on a blood test, your free testosterone, the testosterone that actually does things, might be significantly lower than it should be. Stinging nettle root contains compounds, particularly beta-sitosterol and certain lectins, that bind to SHBG directly, displacing bound testosterone and effectively raising free testosterone levels. Not by making more testosterone, by freeing up the testosterone already being made. This is the missing piece that makes all the testosterone support from ashwagandha, black seed oil, and improved pelvic circulation actually translate into felt, experienced results: energy, drive, physical responsiveness, mental sharpness, the things men actually care about. Take 300 to 600 milligrams of stinging nettle root extract daily. It can be taken anytime, but I prefer morning alongside the citrulline, so the SHBG modulation and the nitric oxide amplification are both working together during your peak hours. Now, these 4 boosters, layered on top of castor oil and black seed oil, create a system that is addressing 6 different biological pathways simultaneously: local pelvic circulation, systemic lymphatic flow, hormonal balance via 5-alpha reductase, cortisol testosterone antagonism, nitric oxide vasodilation, and SHBG testosterone availability. Multiple systems, one result. And when multiple systems move together toward the same outcome, the compound effect is significantly greater than any single element working alone. But none of this works without one crucial element, and it's the part most men skip because it seems too simple to matter. I want to talk to you like the trusted friend I hope I've become in this conversation. And as your trusted friend, I need to tell you this directly. The most sophisticated, scientifically grounded, natural protocol in the world will fail completely if you use it inconsistently, not because the ingredients don't work. They do. But because biology doesn't respond to sporadic inputs, it responds to sustained, consistent signals. Your body is a system that adapts over time, and every single element of what we've discussed today works through adaptation, through the gradual, compound accumulation of biological change that happens when you give your body the right inputs, day after day. So let's build a routine that's simple enough to actually do, effective enough to produce real results, and sustainable enough to keep doing for the long term. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for taking your health seriously enough to spend this time. That choice, that single choice to invest in understanding rather than just managing, that's what separates the men who reclaim their vitality from the men who don't. And I'll see you in the next one.